Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to talk about the summer's wins and losses here in the old garden. Let's get going. So overall, the old garden did relatively well this summer. It was the first summer that we had all of our gardens in place when we started, so we did some planning that was a little outside the box from what we've been doing normally. We learned a lot from this summer, and I think we're going to end up doing things just a bit different next summer, and a lot of that has to do with the things that we're going to discuss now. So let's begin with the first win of the summer, and that was the cucumbers. So I'm showing here the video from the cucumbers at the end of June heading into July. And as you can see, there are cucumbers everywhere. Now, we have mentioned this several times here on the channel, but we were able to put up over 50 jars of pickles. Many of those Leslie went ahead and sliced up so that we just had more actual pickles in a jar. We just ran out of room in the refrigerator, to be honest with you. So overall, I do think cucumbers are going to be something that we grow in this garden going forward, at least for the time being. Now, we'll get into this a little later in the video. There are some definite improvements that we can make in terms of the cucumbers, but overall, they were definitely a win for 2023. Well, we'll balance that win out with a loss. The lettuce that we put in at the end of this row was definitely a loss for this year. One of the reasons for that is because I planted it too late in the summer, and it was just incredibly hot when it went in. And my guess is that I didn't water enough on that specific end of the bed. I noticed on a couple of these rows that the ends weren't getting as much water as the other side of it. So that's probably something that I can do better on next year, is just making sure the coverage in the garden as far as watering is concerned. And that just comes down to, you know, making sure I stay in the moment, right? In my head, when I'm in the garden, I'm always thinking about the next thing to do. I just need to slow down and make sure that when I water, I get every bit of it really well. The second part of why that was a loss was because, well, I left the door open to the garden area and the chickens came in. When the chickens came in, they wiped out just about, I don't know, 2/3 or so of the lettuce before I caught them and got them out of here. That, in conjunction with the heat and the lack of water, because the sun was hitting directly on the soil after the chickens got in there, it just fried the rest of the lettuce. We were able to salvage a little bit and put some purple whole peas down there, but overall it was definitely a loss and something I need to improve on going into next summer. Beansy the garden cat, do you have anything that you would like to add to this discussion? Sounds like Red does. The second win I want to discuss today is the pollinators. They definitely did really well this year here in the old garden. Well, as you can see, the pollinators here did really well. This video is from mid-July of 2023. I did want to show this just because I wanted to point out the perimeter pollinators made an absolute difference when it came to the amount of pests that we had in the garden overall. Now, of course, we still had to battle a few squash bugs on the cucumbers. We did not have any, though, of the hornworms on the cherry tomatoes, so that's definitely a win. Now, of course, this is anecdotal, but what I'm hoping is if we can continue to do this heading forward, we can just cut down a lot on the overall manual labor that it takes to upkeep the garden spaces. The second loss I wanted to discuss were the cherry tomatoes. Now, overall, the trellis worked the way that I thought, and we did get cherry tomatoes off of the trellis throughout the course of the summer. In fact, it's mid-September, and we are still getting cherry tomatoes. So why do I consider it a loss? Well, we decided to grow yellow pear cherry tomatoes this year, and I will not make that mistake again. Here in 7B, or at least where we're at in 7B, the yellow pear tomatoes did not do well at all. Out of the 6 tomato or cherry tomatoes that I put on this trellis, I put in 3 yellow pears. And of those 3 yellow pear tomatoes, 2 of them died by the end of July or early August, mainly due to the heat. It's the only tomato plants that we lost all year long were those 2 yellow pear tomatoes in here. And in fact, when we do the review on the top garden, you'll see we lost those in there as well. Not only that, but it required a huge amount of trimming. The little shoots that come off of it, they started dying off. It was constantly getting blight. So overall, it just was not a good tomato for us here on the homestead. Now, that doesn't mean it won't work for you. They were delicious, they have a really good look, and they go great on salads or canned or any of those kind of things. We won't grow them again though, because when you make that decision early in the year, you've got to live with it throughout the course of your growing cycle. So if I would have put in, say, 2 extra of any other cherry tomato, the Sweet Millions, the orange, or the Dancing with Smurfs, we would have definitely gotten quite a bit more tomatoes. And because that's my favorite food, it has to go on the list of losses. So the third and final win that I wanted to list for the summer of 2023 here in the old garden is going to be the Veggiega bed. Those of you who follow the channel know this was kind of a surprise bed we put in at the beginning of the spring this year. It did really well in the spring. I wasn't sure how it would hold up in the summer, but overall it did really well. It holds moisture really well. The position of it was perfect. Next year we'll probably do a little bit different stuff, only because now we know what it's capable of and sort of the orientation to the sun and how it goes throughout the course of the year. But overall, the Veggiega bed was definitely a win. And the third and final loss that I wanted to discuss today is going to be the trellis for the cucumbers. Now, when I put this up, the idea was I want to make a trellis system with things that I just had here on the homestead. So I had a bit of this wire fencing that we used on both ends, and then we used the bamboo from right down there to extend the height off of the T-posts. And I thought it was going to be more than enough to hold for the entire year. The problem is that in the, end of June, early July, we had a week where we just had crazy thunderstorms come through. We had winds that were, I think they were in the low 50s. They topped out with wind gusts around, 52, 53 miles an hour. And they came through and they broke the bamboo poles that were holding these up, which of course made the cucumbers fall down, and then I had to get out here and tie them back up, and it was a nightmare, especially with the weight of the cucumbers on the actual fencing themselves. The part that was really disappointing was that when it came down, it did kill the top parts of several of our cucumbers, and I just can't help but feel like overall, we could have gotten a lot more cucumbers had I done a better job of putting this trellis system up. I say all that to say that this will be something that will be definitely improved going into next season because the cucumbers did so well. So I'm going to sit down and go back to the drawing board, as the man says, and we'll have a better trellis system designed for the summer of 2024. So overall, I would say the old garden did really well this year in the summertime. I mean, there were a few things that we left on the table. Like I said, with the trellis, we could have got more cucumbers, although I don't know where in the heck we would have put them. Another thing that I think that we could have probably done a better job on is the green beans. I say that because next year, whenever we pull the middle row out from the spring planting, I'm going to do that whole dadgum thing in green beans. I think the mistake that I made on the green beans was I didn't soak the bed all the way through before I planted them. Now, again, we got quite a few green beans and we were able to can some, even though we had a crazy hot part of the summer. But I just can't help but feel like we should have gotten more green beans from that area. So it wasn't a loss, but it definitely wasn't a win either. All right. Well, as always, I appreciate everyone for hanging out with me today. Until next time, I hope you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.